me know in 7, Tammy, thanks.
7.
Thank you, good evening. I'll call the Board of Education meeting to order, please. Could we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay. So I'll begin this evening with public comment. Is there anyone this evening who'd like to address the board? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment. We're going to begin with the PTO report. I don't believe Megan is here this evening. No. I'm going to cover some remarks from the PTO under the board chair remarks regarding future meetings and things like that with the PTO. So we'll move that. At this time, I'll need a approval of the minutes. I need a motion to approve the following Board of Education meeting minutes, regular meeting minutes, July 16, 2024. Leslie and Eric. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, the superintendent's report. Dr. Parlato.
Thank you very much. So we are gearing up for a successful 24-25 school year. Tomorrow, as a matter of fact, is the first professional learning day for teachers. There's a number of workshops that they'll be able to attend to support their classroom success and for students as well. Our facilities and maintenance department have been hard at work in getting classrooms and hallways ready, including painting and sprucing up each school campus on the outside. Students' arrival, which we can't wait for, is Monday, August 26th. A few reminders for families, and we'll say this again later in the agenda. There will be breakfast and lunch at no charge for all students in 24-25. I'd like to thank our food services director, Mrs. Sullivan, for completing the application to make this possible. So there was plenty of paperwork that went along with that, but there's a wonderful benefit in the end. The first 2 days of school for students, Monday, August 26th and Tuesday, August 27th, are early dismissal days. And grades 6 through 12 dismiss at 12, and grades pre-K to 5 dismiss at 1. I'm so excited that this evening the board will discuss its 24-25 goals. These will connect perfectly with our district improvement work. Over the next few meetings, I will say a bit more about our core messages for 24-25. The first idea that I'd like to highlight this evening, and this will apply across our district and each school, is being on track, and you'll hear us use this phrase on track throughout the year. Being on track for students relates to academics, which is A, being here, which is B, having to do with attendance, of course. C is community, and doing the right thing is D. So these A, B, C, and D words are helpful reminders for students and families about the road to success and making progress on that road throughout not only this year, but in their career in New Milford Public Schools. We'll also talk about throughout the year how our district and our schools are remaining on track and progressing through the months. Again, we can't wait for our students to come back to school on Monday, August 26th, and I can't wait to see all that they'll accomplish this year. Thank you.
The parents are just as excited.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you, Dr. Parlato. I'll move it along to subcommittee reports, and then I'll follow up with my chair report. Could we begin with policy? Leslie.
Hello. So nothing earth-shattering happening in policy. I just want to highlight that today we are going to see 3 policies for the first read, and they're going to be up for approval. Normally we do it 3 times. We see them, not necessarily here at this board, but we see them 3 times. But we want to get these into the handbooks right away for the school year. So we'll be voting on them tonight.
Those are on for approval, correct?
Yep.
Great. Thank you.
That's it.
All righty. And Committee on Learning, Tammy.
Yeah, we have 16 curricula on tonight's agenda. We had a presentation and a robust discussion at our meeting last week on the report card revision and 6 through 12 grading practices. And all the materials and presentations have been sent to the full board.
Great. There's a lot on here this evening.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Congratulations to Sue.
many pages. Yeah.
All right, facilities.
Good stuff.
So I'm delighted to share the news that facilities will be having a show and tell this evening, thanks to Mr. Cunningham. During the discussion of possible action portion, he will propose his capital plan for this coming year, and we will discuss and hopefully vote on that. Later on, under the items of information, we'll have an update on ongoing facilities project. In continuing show and tell, Mr. Cunningham will actually show us how the roof goes together and comes apart. We've got toys that we can play with later. And also, he's going to run down the amazing accomplishments in summer's project, some that his crew got done over the summer, which we saw at facilities. It was very impressive. So that's facilities.
Awesome, thanks, Tom. And operations, Eric?
Well, amongst Anthony's usual thorough presentation, there's one thing I'd want to point out that we're going to go over our 5-year plan, which I thought was really interesting. And you can kind of see where we're at with things like the turf field, which isn't even on the 5-year plan yet, because we expect it to be until 2030. And I think it's a very good presentation of how we're managing the progress and how we're maintaining these facilities. So look forward to that.
Awesome, thank you. And the board chair's report. First of all, welcome back. Over the summer, some of us have been attending some of the negotiations on the negotiation committee. We have 4 bargaining units we're currently working on. Thank you, and thank you, Eric. It's a huge commitment, and I'm really grateful for the team. And so we'll move things along. If there's anything that comes before the board for ratification, you'll be the first to know. It'll go through both subcommittees. As we open school, just a gentle reminder that it's a little busy out there with some of the construction. Let's be patient. We're trying. It's a little trying. So bear with us because it's an exciting time, but it's just a little congested. Also, as a reminder, the PTO and all the town and community support, they're vital to this board. What they supply, what they bring to us. So Megan Bird reached out to Dr. Parlato and myself and reminded me that their dates are changing. They have a monthly PTO townwide meeting, as you know, Tammy. It's very difficult sometimes to be in 3 places at once. A town council meeting, a subcommittee meeting, so it's, I find myself sometimes three places in one night. They are going to rotate their meetings. And I would ask that any board member, I will put these meetings out to the board, that any board member who wants to grab a meeting and represent the Board of Education, it would be great. Because I think that all, involvement and all representation of the board with our partners is important. So I'll be sending that out to the board so you can kind of see if it will work in your schedule. And I think they're moving to the 3rd Monday, or I have the dates, but I wanted to put that out there. Other than that, we're going to, enter into our September, schedule. And before you know it, in October, we'll be starting budget and prep. Sorry to be a Debbie Downer on that, but here we go. So thank you. All right, and that's it for my report. We're going to move into the discussion and possible action portion of the agenda. Just for clarification, the Operations Committee, Eric, you're okay? There was no motions taken to operations to move the reports, just a formality.
That's correct.
I just put them on here. It's within my purview, but I would never, I like to be transparent. So you're okay with that, right?
Yes, thanks for the
thank
heads
you.
up, though. Usually it would trip me
No
up.
worries, it just, I'm a, procedure stuff. You're welcome. I wanted to be clear for the record. All right, so the monthly reports. I'll need a motion to approve the monthly reports as position dated July 31st, purchase resolution D785, and a request for the budget transfers, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, Eric. I appreciate that, and thanks, Tom. Okay, questions on this? It's early in the game, so there shouldn't be too much here. But Anthony, did you want to do an overview that you presented comments at operations?
Just briefly, a few comments here.
Thank you.
On the budget position regarding expenses, which is the first 3 pages of the report.
Right.
This was balances as of July 31st as we begin to encumber for goods, services, contracts, known variables at the beginning of the school year. Payroll encumbrances will take place over the next several weeks as we gear up for that first paycheck back to teachers, which is scheduled for September 6th. On the revenue side, which is the fourth and final page of the budget position, the only revenue that's been realized so far is some Medicaid reimbursement that overlapped from the end of last year that we received. And the capital reserve account numbers and the turf field replacement account numbers on page 404, those have not changed from last month.
Can I make a comment on that, please? Let's go to the revenue piece for the capital reserve. That number is not inclusive of our pending audit.
That's correct. It doesn't include our fiscal year and 23-24 deposit.
However, that request, which was sent through to the board in the end of June this past year, has been approved by the town council and the Board of Finance. So once the audit is complete and it is submitted, that will go into the capital reserve. Now, we did earmark, as as the board knows, components for the town reimbursement and also capital reserve. So I beg your pardon, the turf field. To your point, Eric, if the town matches the board's $100,000 that I believe was earmarked in our motion in June, that account will be close to $900,000. So we have done a very good job, town and board, fulfilling our promise to this community that we're going to watch that. So I appreciate that. We also have I'll wait for capital on that. But going back to the actual page 404, have the auditors started yet, Anthony?
Yes, they started their preliminary work. They're going to be out I think the October 21st through 28th, somewhere in there, to continue their work in preparation for their closing of the audit and final presentation, which will take place in January.
Okay, and I notice here that you have the ESG contribution, or I should say payment of the $895. That's reflected in this number. That's been taken care of?
Yes.
We're good to go?
Yes, for
Okay.
23 and 24. There'll be another payment due in December of 2025.
Okay. Because it's a large sum of money, and so that's clear. I had some other questions on the purchase resolution, but I can take that off at another time. I had a lot of notes, so I'll wait on that. Does anybody else have any questions on the financials? Great. All those in favor? Wonderful. Thank you very much. So let's go on to the 5-year capital plan. Let me see if I'm right on the matrix. Bear with me. That's next. Okay. Are we doing a presentation for the capital plan or no?
Yes.
Yes.
right behind you.
That's why I wanted to move. So
Yes, so Mr. Cunningham is going to present his facilities requests that are part of the capital plan, and as you know, there's also technology and
There is.
band and music.
There is.
So he's going to begin.
I'm going to move out of the way, and if you don't mind procedurally, I'm going to wait to put the motion on the floor. Okay? We'll listen to the request. We'll put the motion on the floor, and we'll work our way through it.
As Dr. Perlow said, this is really just the facility segment of our 5-year capital, and this is really just speaking to this upcoming 24-25 year.
There's a throwback up there.
It is.
Yeah, no, this is the building we're sitting in now, so as many of you may know, this was the original high school. It was opened up in 1963, so obviously elements of this building do date back to 63. There were renovations made in 1970 where an additional wing was added and connected these two wings. That were, in 2000, and obviously we got the new high school, and this became the intermediate school. So, and I'm clicking, there we go. Oops,
Oh, boy.
yeah.
He's all done now.
Wow.
In the interest of time, yeah. So one thing we're looking to do is get a new pickup truck. You can see our 2002 pickup trucks left. We have taken as far as we can go with it. We did take off the bed. One of our team members is there. We're grinding it down, repainting it, upcycling it to put onto another truck. So we've tried to milk everything we can out of these vehicles, but it's time to replace one in our rotation for the landscape work we do, and most specifically for snow removal. We're also looking to get a larger scissor lift. Currently, the lift we have really can't get to some of the higher ceilings in our gymnasium. This is a shot where we had to rent one to do sprinkler work at the high school library, the foyer at the high school. We can't get the sprinkler head, some of the lighting, some of the HVAC equipment, as I said, too, in our gym. So we're looking to get a larger lift and a proper trailer. Now, what do I mean by a proper trailer? We have landscaping trailers, but those decks are not really designed to let you drive up. This is a 3,900-pound lift. Oh, man. That you see there to the left. Yeah, I do. So this is a 3,900-pound lift you see to the left. So you want to be able to drive it onto a trailer that's specifically designed for those. And as you drive on, the tire there, the axle acts as a fulcrum, and it latches down in place. So those are the two items that we're looking to get for this capital year. Recurring masonry work, you're seeing some repoint that needs to occur here to go and plane the chimney. On the other side, we see the capstones that were used there at the high school. You can see the crack where the masonry, especially when every time you have a horizontal surface like that in the water for 20-some years now, it's just beat it on it. It atrophies that masonry in there. We already have started this to some degree, and we have some further work the New England Masonry is providing for us here this fall. But we want to see that continue in here the next future years at all the schools, considering that most of them have brick and mortar. So we're also looking at a new bunker machine. We have 9 ball diamonds on our probably 20 all-purpose fields that we have. This is one we're trying to rejuvenate here up at Scatticoke there at Baldwin Park. The bunker machine looks like an old 3-wheel trike that some of you may be familiar with, but it has different attachments on it so that you can sit there and go through your clay and turfus mixture. And so we know we really want to get, and as I'll go to the next slide here. So there you can see just some of the ball diamonds we have at Sarah Noble at the high school. We're really trying to encourage people to stay off of the varsity baseball and varsity softball fields. So that's why I want to bring these online and maintain them. So we'd like to keep those for our student athletes. We don't have hour limitations as some park and recreation departments do as far as how much you can use these fields. And so as a result, to try to keep them sustainable, we'd like to see some of that traffic get off of those 2 fields in particular and give them some rest during the summer months. You know, we don't have no water out there, so we've been blessed this year with a lot of rain, probably too much. But in years that we have drought, combined with playing out there, you know, it can just rip up the field to a point. It takes a lot of effort then to try to get it back here in the fall. So we've done a lot with our first wave of camera system enhancements, primarily at Scatticoke and at the high school. We'd like to continue with that. There's a fairly generic picture on the left of the servers. That's really the meat and potatoes of it, where a lot of the money is spent. Anytime you're adding cameras, you're adding cameras that are going from analog to digital. You're going to have the capacity to operate those and to save that video footage. So that's another element of the request we're looking to do a second phase at the elementary schools with our camera system. So inclusive playground equipment. We have very good playgrounds. There's a lot of equipment on our playgrounds. We have pieces of equipment that are even ADA compliant. But there's a certain element of our school community, the neurodiverse children in the school community, and we really want to get things that engage them. And so as you can see, they're tactile things that may not be some of the classic merry-go-rounds and such that you think of when you associate your playgrounds, but this is equipment that we like to see expand, so we're really addressing 100% of our student body on our playgrounds. Okay, this may or may not be on the final. So at Hill Plain, we have a septic system. We have a septic system at Scatticoke and at Northville. This is the original from 1967. This is unlike a residential system. There's an extra chamber associated with it called a dosing chamber, and in that you have this siphon valve. And as the name would imply, a dosing chamber, it's a means of metering out how much effluent go out to your leach fields. We want to be able to control that. We also want to be able to eject it with some force, so we're encompassing all of our leach fields. So there is this bell and riser, and as the water rises, it fills this up. Once it breaches the top, though, and goes over that drain, it then drains out, and now it creates a siphon. And once that breaks, then the air introduces again, and that's how it just keeps doing that. We, though, suspect, because we've gone ahead to clean this out several times, it's very hard to access. This is cast iron that's down in the middle of this tank, that this is at the end of life. So what we'd like to see are pumps
Are they gravity fed right now, or are they pump systems?
Yeah, it's gravity fed. That's what the dosing chamber does. And it's great, but when it's an end of life, this will just give me a lot of grief tonight.
I think that's at the end of the life.
Yeah. We want to be able to go with pumps, and the pumps that have floats in them, they're electrical. There's 2 of them. They're on lead lag. 1 is enough to handle the system, but by having 2, then you have some redundancy there. And so we do have pumps currently in Scotticoke. They're there as a backup. Currently, the siphon bell still works at Scotticoke, but we did have to go to pump several years back there at Northville. So that's something we'd like to see happen with that system.
You said it's steel right now? It's a cast iron?
Yeah, that's what the siphon bell is typically made of. So it's been down there since 1967. So
Are you looking to
it owes us nothing.
replace it with the same, or are you going to use PVC?
This is why we want to go to the pumps. So you'd really have to have that whole entire system taken out. They're casted sort of in place. It's not the kind of thing that we could remove that and really replace that.
Okay.
And it really wouldn't be cost effective. So we're better off to be assured to have pumps now that are electric. So this is the canopy at Hill and Plain. As you can see from this photo, there were several blowout patches done here. It's actually tearing away. It's a little more focused over here where it's ripping away from. It's an EPDM rubber canopy blowout patches where it's been done in the past. You can see the ponding. It needs to be at this stage. It's end of life. It needs to be completely removed and redone. These are Hill and Plain gutters and snow guards. It's kind of hard to make it out in this because of the lighting, but over here there's actually a tear in this gutter here. This is being addressed right now, but we actually want to go a little further with it and see some other gutters that you can see the snow. There were no snow guards put up here originally. There's a walkway down here. The weight of this snow is most likely what actually tore this particular gutter. This will be replaced here at the beginning of the school year, but we know we have other elements of it we'd still like to see addressed. We really can't wait on that until we go to look to do the roof, which is several years down the road. So the old Larson farmhouse that's on the corner of the high school property is actually under our purview. It's the facilities department office. We know that this roof is just a 3-tab shingled roof. We don't know what date it was put on. It certainly wasn't put on, it's been under our purview, which has been since 2000. So in the interest of trying to maintain this building, we want to see the roof replaced on it. And on that property also is a large red barn. I'm sure you've all seen it, right across from Cumberland Farms. You can see this picture in particular. There's a little bit of a split here. This is a timber frame. These are mortise and tenon with drawboard trundles in them. And we want to be able to have an engineer come out and really speak to it and make sure what would we need to do in the future to make sure we can maintain the structural integrity of this barn. While it certainly appears in good shape, while the roof was redone in 2007, it's historic. We think elements of it could go back upwards of 200 years. We know it was probably a behemoth dairy farm around the turn of the 1900s. So again, something that's under our stewards of it, and we'd like to ensure that we're doing the right by it and have an engineer come in and really speak to it. So the town has requested, they want to look to start in the bond cycle the Northville roof. They're requesting from us to put the money forward from the roof A and E. That would be to develop construction documents and a bid package, then to go out and do the actual roof replacement. Northville roof, this flat part of the roof is the original from 1981. It's ballasted EPDM. This is shingled originally in 1981 when the school opened. This was a standing seam metal roof, similar to the one we have on the high school currently. And looking back, there were warranty issues with it in the 80s. It was replaced with this type of roof in about 87, I believe. That roof must have failed because by 97 they tore it off completely, put down new plywood, and put down new shingles on it. So even this is the newest part, and it still goes back to 1997. These elements of the roof on the flat roof here go back to 1981. So yes, every aspect of this roof should be eligible then for our reimbursement through DAS when we go forward with this project.
And just to be clear, that's a project we're going to be working with the town.
Correct.
For funding.
Yes.
Okay.
I believe when we did the high school that we put the money up for the A&E on it. So in good faith, we're looking to do that now and get that process started.
Thank you.
So gutter seam patching was something that was discussed as part of the roof project at the high school. It was never really in the actual scope, but it was something that we realized. And if you look at this picture, what you can see, all this water here that's splashing its foundation, you can almost go with a plumb bob and see that's exactly where a seam is. And so it's letting us know that all these seams are leaking. So the solution, there was a mock-up done of this, in this picture it's kind of faded, but if you look here, you can see some darker spots. This would have gone through and actually patched up where these seams are. So we're looking to continue that process now and do all the seams and that, and just, you wouldn't see the immediate effect of it, but over years that water being on the foundation is going to work its way under there and cause this damage in the future.
So that gutter is seamed? It's a seamed
Yes,
gutter?
it's a seamed gutter. Probably because of the sheer size of it. You typically on a commercial gutter like that, it's rare that you would find it that it would be seamless because of the gauge and the depth of it. And I still believe, and looking, discussing with people, it still would be cheaper to patch these seams than it would be to tear those off and try to replace it in its entirety, is what my understanding was. So we did an inspection of our theater. I don't know that we've ever done it in the lifetime we've had the high school theater here. There was nothing that came back that was an immediate safety concern, but they do have some deficiencies they'd like to see us address. I mean, here you can just see it's a 25-year-old rope, and it finally snapped, and this was used to open and close the curtain. This is a smoke curtain over here. You can sort of see the gap of light. By code, this really should go down all the way and be flush with this floor. So we're looking to have money to do some of these repairs in the theater. This is the Scattercook septic system. We had to provide to the state, and the town worked with us on this, a wastewater management plan. In that, they came back to us and said, we'd like you to go then and do some more quarterly sampling of your monitoring wells, and they wanted some information on these. These are called laterals, the pieces that come off here in your system on their functionality. So we'd like to have an engineering firm come out there and provide us that service and reply back to the state with that. And we have the Scattercook oil tank. So we did get the Serenova oil tank out successfully now. The Scattercook oil tank went in October of '91, so it has passed its 30-year lifespan. It's a double hull tank, very similar to the one we just took out, and that's something we'd like to start to pursue to get that removed. We do have oil burners there, so we most likely be looking to put in an above-ground storage tank. That's it. Do we have any questions on the particular items I've mentioned here in the capital?
Just a quick question. Did you
Sure.
say that truck was 2002?
That truck, I believe, is a 2002, correct. It's a little misleading too when you go with dates or even mileage because, you know, we never really leave New Milford,
Right.
but it's the work we do with the truck. Plowing in particular, I know who plows can tell you, it's, if you want to ruin a truck quickly, use it to plow. Just it puts a lot of the drivetrain, a lot of strain. Obviously, we're driving over salted roads there. We do our best to try to power wash. We actually picked up a thing I shared on Instagram video. It's a power jet that you can wheel underneath to try to clean off the salt and sand and stuff from that to keep extend the lifespan of our frames. So, but as you saw from that truck, we run it in the ground. We took it for all we could.
On the guns again, did you get pricing on it?
So the pricing we have was based upon when Greenwood was out there. That was from the patching. They were looking at about $150,000 to do the actual seam repair. We certainly know the replacement was more. It's something I can pursue.
Yeah, here it is, right, thank you.
It looked like a lot of seams in that picture. So
Absolutely.
It looked like a lot of seams, and it didn't look like, I don't know how big, perspective-wise, how big that
We
was.
can, I can certainly start to go down the avenue to look at what would be to replace commercial. I know that we were on the project and we were talking with the town on it, looking to incorporate it, that industry standard just really dictated that the numbers to replace those would be extremely high and was going to be way outside whatever contingency money that they had at the time to pursue it, so.
Yeah, I just hate throwing $100,000 and some odd at something that it's a Band-Aid, eventually, it's gonna go eventually again, and
I don't know what the warranty would be or what they would give us on the lifespan of having those seams. I understand that.
So in terms of the gutters, though, structurally, we're not concerned about we're not concerned about sagging or.
No, there were no signs of that.
About leaking at
The integrity of them seem fine. It's just these seams that were sealed, and the sealant that was used after going on 25 years now is no longer serving its purpose.
Right. They didn't have, even in commercial, they didn't have seamless 60 feet back then. They have seamless 60-footers now. And it's a pretty good gauge for industrial.
But I certainly.
That's a comfortable look too. We're hoping that it'll be correct.
I think they felt that that number was high, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
So that number was
But
too
I
high.
use that as my placeholder, knowing that we don't suspect we would, if we go out to bid on it, I don't think we would see numbers higher than that. So
That's what I was
as always, I want to make sure we have enough contingency money, we have enough money encumbered to cover a project. I'd rather come in lower.
I'm going to jump in on that because it's a really good point. I think that, board members should know what they're voting on. And so when we put a motion on the floor to approve it, okay? Anthony, could you walk us through the financial component once we approve the 5-year capital plan? It doesn't mean we're necessarily doing all of it or pulling out all these and doing all these projects. This is a fluid document, correct?
Correct, but when the board approved the 24-25 column of the 5-year capital plan, in this case, the ask is $1,424,000.
And that's what we'll be going to the capital reserve request for.
Yes.
Right. However, Mr. Cunningham, as you said, sometimes we're able to perform the work less than what's earmarked. It happens.
Yes.
So why wouldn't we? If you can save money and get the product, that's what we're supposed to be doing. So these are earmarked dollar amounts. I'm correct?
Correct, so gutter seams, for instance, that we're talking about at the high school.
Right.
Out of that $1,424,000, we'll get that funding, we'll set up a project specific for the gutters, specific for the estimate right now at $150,000. If, when the work is done, completed, signed off on, any remaining, we'll go back to the capital reserve fund.
Right. It's whatever we draw off that earmarked dollar amount. But on the 5-year capital plan, if you take a look at the bottom of page 3 of 3, there's 5-year capital plan other. Those are things that are not in this proposal because we haven't identified how we're going to pay for them or how that's going to work.
That's exactly
So
right.
I want to be clear on that. That doesn't mean that it's us recognizing and the town recognizing what we need to do, but we haven't exactly figured out where all this money's coming from.
You're exactly right. A good example of that in that other in 25-26 is the NES roof replacement. That number probably needs to be revised.
Right.
But going into it, that's why we are requesting in 24-25 to do the actual study.
Right.
As a lead into that number to firm it up for when
Go out to bond.
we're bonding. Yes.
Right. And we had discussions with the mayor. We've had several meetings over capital and some of that. If the town can help us out on some projects and identify them, we try and do that. But I just wanted to call that to everyone's attention that that's not part of this dollar amount pullout. Those are identified, but we're not really voting on that. So, because those are large numbers.
One last thing,
Yeah.
the leaks that were on there, are they where any sidewalks are, any chance of it freezing and becoming a slip?
No. Our sidewalks are away from the building enough that what you're seeing is on dirt, and that's why it makes those little marks. It's just splashing the dirt and kicking it back
So
on the
that,
foundation.
I'm just making sure it wasn't just that one side there, it was somewhere else.
Any other questions? Just another clarification. You'll see that the instrument and uniforms and equipment are on here. Those are reoccurring expenditures that we have made a commitment to the town to keep that cycle going, and you'll see that.
That's exactly right. And I think Mr. Turner has some technology
Yes.
he wants to go over.
Through the chair.
Yes.
I would like, Mr. Cunningham, if you would speak to, on page 2 of 3, if you would say a few words about, I don't know, 7/8 of the way down, Sarah Noble pipe insulation. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I'm sort of painting with a broad brush on that. Really with Sarah Noble, it would start with going out and getting a mechanical engineer to come in and speak to. We know that for about 2 months out of the year here, when dew points rise up, we struggle to sit here and address the humidity. We have air conditioning in here. We have a very good air conditioning system, but even an air conditioner, the primary purpose is really just to cool the air, and dehumidification is really just a byproduct of that. So on some of these days, and we saw it this year when dew points hit 80, we struggle with this system to maintain a dehumidification to the level we'd like to see it. So we've done a lot to go and clean coils, replace valves, change scheduling so things run a little at longer terms, caulk the outside of the windows to make sure we weren't getting any air drawn if there were negative pressure in. When we do come across any deficiencies, we put dehumidifiers in rooms and fans in rooms to help assist with that. But it's been a perennial problem here. From what I understand, we've certainly gotten better at addressing it, but I think we've exercised all the means we can as a facilities department. And I think the next phase, we put in there for next year, just because we don't have a dollar amount associated with that, is to bring an engineer to speak to. I don't even know if the unit ventilators that are in those classrooms are sufficient enough, if they need to be complemented with a dehumidification system, if they need to be additional air handlers put into some of these spaces. So that's why that was put in. We do know that the pipe insulation is inferior. We have had companies out and spoke to that. It's not uncommon in buildings this age that heating pipe insulation was just in place.
Is that when the school was renovated, that was kind of, is that how that happened, or how?
Most likely it was the pipe insulation that was, so if you have heat pipe insulation, you have a gap between two pieces of insulation. You lose some heat, but you're not really compromising the integrity of the heat in your building. If you have that gap there, and I'm running 50-degree chilled water through it now, and it's running through interstitial space now above a ceiling, and that space in there could be 80, 90 degrees, you get condensation. It doesn't take much, and then it just runs down pipes, drips on ceiling tiles. So when we notice that, the ceiling tiles are taken out, but it's a labor-intensive process, and it certainly takes a lot away for the sweet spot, if you will, is probably mid-July and probably starts to peter out here at the beginning of September.
And what do we do to, with all the moisture that well, I shouldn't say all, but obviously there's moisture and we're recognizing that. You mentioned dehumidifiers. Mm-hmm. Do we have them in all the classrooms? What do we do?
In all the classrooms. Typically, the ones that are the most impacted are on the first floor, where I think you also have two other things that go on there. One is, whenever these, you draw the condensation on the coils, it drips down into a tray, the tray goes to a pipe outside. Right. Once outside the building on a hot summer day, you can literally see where every classroom is, water dripping out of these pipes. The ones on the ground level actually drain right directly underground. So if you even look out to where the old tennis court was, or the playground, we're actually sub that level. So when you see the ponding out there, what it's telling me is the groundwater is so high, I'm not sure where that water can even go when it drains out. Additionally, that slab there is directly in contact with the ground. So if any of you have ever seen in your garages or your basements, there's no vapor barrier under there back in 1970 when they did the addition to stop any kind of moisture wanting to wick up and the hydrostatic pressure from even just water table wanting to force up. So those are the rooms particularly we focus on, and we've had the biggest concerns with trying to address the humidity. So that's where we've had dehumidifiers there. But even these dehumidifiers, it's not, these rooms are 900 some square feet, so it's not like we run down to Home Depot and get a residential style one.
You're right.
Okay. I remember one of our meetings, it was discussed, we were doing something with additional air handlers, or a study was being done. Did we
So that's part of a separate, that the state is making HVAC evaluation. So I'm hoping that some of the data that comes from that is something that we can incorporate with the mechanical engineer to say, listen, we actually have these measurements. We know the amount of CFMs that these units are producing, and then can they weigh in professionally and say, that isn't even enough air you're putting in the room to get this heat exchange to go, this transfer.
Is it conditioned air, though? I mean, do other classrooms get conditioned air? Hey, are they talking about conditioned air?
In
the makeup air?
This is, yes, we do have conditioned air in all the rooms in the building. Half the building then is done with rooftop units, so you have a much greater volume of air that's being brought in there versus these small unit ventilators that just have what we call squirrel cages, small little motors in them. I can't tell you what the CFMs are, but they're actually this week, ironically, we're out here measuring those. So we'll know how many CFMs these are putting out. Did they meet the original specs of the unit? Was that proper for that space anyway? So
I'm going to call on Sarah next. Did you want me to? Go ahead.
Now, one of the byproducts of this situation is mildew, correct? Mildew can
yeah, we can cover that. That's why a ceiling tile, as soon as we see it stained, we rip it out because we don't want it to sit there and fester.
Because, well, I taught here, and when I taught here from 2002 to 2008, it was an issue then, it was moisture. And I've heard from a whole bunch of teachers since they came back that there's tons of mildew in their rooms, black mildew. Things have been destroyed, things they've had to get rid of. You know, are we looking at a building-wide problem here that we need to solve? That we can't keep band-aiding it and putting up, I imagine you can't count how many ceiling tiles you've had to replace.
So, and this is why I think we went through this process. If the board feels that we want, that this is not something we want to put off the next fiscal year, then I think this is the opportunity now that we put it in this fiscal year, and we go out right now with an RFP for an engineer to come in here and start to give us the feedback, provide construction documents and a bid package then for whatever work we need to do. I certainly think that pipe insulation will be part of that project, but they could go a step further and say, we need to have separate units that are installed every so often to help address the humidity, things to complement it. They make, I'm not exactly sure all the different resolutions. We have exhaust fans in those rooms, but those rooms originally probably didn't have air conditioning back when this was the high school.
Right.
So those exhaust fans were meant, you opened up the windows, much like at Home Plain or Northville, and the air went and it was exhausted out. Are those exhaust fans doing us a disservice? Should they be up in the interstitial space? Because they're now sitting there, are they drawing away too much? Are they bringing in too much negative pressure, meaning are they sucking in around every crack around that window, and on those hot days when it's 90 degrees out and the humidity is 90, are they drawing that in, and that unit just can't do that much for us. As I said, an air conditioning unit, it's a byproduct that you get dehumidification, but it's not a dehumidifier. It's really meant to transfer heat.
So let me expand upon that, because that's a good question. So you're scheduled, that's slated for next year, correct?
On the capital improvement plan.
Exactly, out of the capital improvement plan. And what's the dollar amount on that?
I don't have a dollar.
Exactly, because
I think the A&E, we just know from experience typically, when we go out there in A&E, we're certainly anywhere from $25,000 to $35,000 on a project.
Okay, so before we move it, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, or I'm not saying we should, it's a board decision of the priorities here. Do you think that we should do an air quality study? Does it have anything to do with it?
We can do that. We can bring in a fuss and O'Neill, but that's not going to give us any resolutions. That's not going to be a game plan for resolving it.
Of course, but would it identify any?
Assuages concerns, certainly we can do it to try.
That's my point.
We want to pinpoint, rooms that we think are more suspect that we need to.
Well, that data, perhaps, and I don't know. It's a team conversation here. That data may determine what we move and how we move things around. Wouldn't it be part of that conversation, or no? In other words, if we can do an air quality study, how much are they? And when was the last time one was done in this building? Do we know?
I'm aware of one that was done years ago. I couldn't give you the specific date.
Long time
Look
ago.
into it. Yeah.
Okay, do we have a cost on that?
I do not have a cost on what that would be. I know we've done similar ones at E Street. I mean, they do a sample size, so it depends on the depth you want to go with it, I suppose. So we've spent several $1,000s to do it at E Street in the past, so you could be certainly looking at tens of thousands of dollars if you're looking to do any room that has a unit ventilator in it.
Okay. Is that something in conjunction with the concerns of the moisture that we should be looking at?
We certainly could.
To know where we're at? I think is that something the board thinks that we should take a look at? It's not a long period of time to do the study.
No, but what I will say too is, it's not, I think people are in the misnomer. It's not as if they grab a piece of the air and measure it. And what they're also going to tell you is, as you get to the fall months, you'll have a higher mold parts per million than you will typically even in a building, because when you see all those leaves coming down and all that rain happening, you have a higher level out there. So it's not necessarily where you just grab a sample of air and tell you that, oh, we've met, we're under a permissible level.
So I guess the question really is there a test that we can do to identify what's causing it? Is there a way to find out what's causing the mold?
Well, the mold would be because these systems cannot dehumidify to the extent we need to on extremely hot, muggy days.
Based on the way this building really came about. It's just the way it is.
And you can't have mold without moisture and heat. That's what
I know, but if I drill down to, I think if I can speak for you, what he's saying is the air quality is going to be a little subjective based on.
Okay.
No, and another thing too is, if you're seeing it on hard surfaces, we can clean hard surfaces. And we know that the coils themselves are clean. So the air that's getting blown across these coils into your room is not going across, it's not a fan blowing across a moldy coil. So the air itself, this is not being ejected into the air. So if you're seeing it on a surface, especially, that's why you see so many hard surfaces, and we don't want any kind of upholstery stuff in, because you can't really clean upholstery. We knew that even during COVID. So when we see it on a hard surface, we know we have the ability to clean and disinfect that.
Anybody else?
Yeah, so just so I understand, this is a problem in the hottest summer months as far as the condensation in the ground.
Correct. No, you won't get the condensation here in a couple of weeks when the dew point goes down. On a day like today, it would be, you wouldn't notice it.
Yeah, and your crew deals with it.
No, it's a disproportionate amount of time that we have to spend over here at this school to handle that during the summer months.
Right. So this is something we need to address at least next year, if not this year. But as far as the necessity right now, you're kind of almost past the.
Yeah, and I think that's too, when you're trying to weigh the projects you're doing, I'm talking about a percentage of the school, and I'm talking about a small percentage of the year.
Yeah.
So, not to diminish it and not to sit here and be dismissive of people's concerns, but when you're just weighing all these millions of dollars of capital projects, you know, that's why I presented to the board. If they want to move it in the queue, absolutely.
Understood. Thank you.
I'll follow up with one more question on that, because I just want to be clear. If we wanted to do an air quality test, I'm not hearing that it's necessary, and maybe I'm misunderstanding you. You know, that, and not you, but that it is the data that we need to either move this project into this year. I guess I just have some concerns that if you have moisture, you know, that there isn't a, areas that are better than others, I guess, or.
Yeah, well, then I suggest we can move forward with that. No, this too, though, is if it comes back and says, no, that this wasn't above levels that we think are excited, then do we deep six this project? So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword, so I don't want it to come back and sit there and then people say, well, why are we going to invest at hundreds of thousands of dollars in doing new pipe insulation and such?
Because we know we need it.
Well, I know.
We have ceiling tiles, and we know
And that's what I'm saying. So, but if we go and do then the air quality testing, it comes back and says it's fairly neutral. You have a couple classrooms. Then do we sit there and say, well, then how do we justify this project? So I don't want it to.
For me, for the record, my concern is a safety issue.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it, cut and dry. So if we know that the way that this building is built, that the board has pretty much said, we need to do this. This needs to be taken care of. Doesn't matter what the report comes back to in the way of, well, you're okay, you know, we've already kind of made a commitment that was something that we wanted to take a look at, just what year to do it. So I just wanted to put that out there. Eric?
When we're talking about air quality, are we talking about looking for level of mold in the air? Is that what we're talking about? Or is air quality more generic?
For me, it's the concern with all the moisture. What does that mean? You know, is there some kind of mold or mildew that's not?
Because the Department of Health has no acceptable level of mold, no limits based on it. As a matter of fact, if you look at the guidance from the state, they say don't test for it. Because there's no limit. They can't say this much mold is a problem. There's no definition for it. And so it's almost like it's a question that you ask that it has no answer.
Okay.
So it would, if we spend money on it, and we're going to replace the facilities anyway, we're kind of wasting money by doing that, if that's what we're looking for.
Okay, fair. That's a very fair point. My view is just, are we doing what we need to do to get the information to make those decisions? That's it. That was my concern. So,
I think part of, just to clarify the discussion, would we be able to do air quality testing from the current general fund, and it's not part of our capital request? I just want to make sure that it's clear for the board.
we could.
I just want to make sure that we have that.
As a line item for what I have for servicing equipment and such in Serenova, you mean? Do I have the money there to do it?
Or elsewhere.
I mean, as far as doing it from a line that I would have to address just, the mechanics and the work that we do through the school year, I'd be reluctant to tap into that for it, because if we're going to do a good snapshot of it, I think we're going to want to make an investment, and it's going to be several $1,000s.
I just want to make sure we're all talking about the same things.
Yeah, if I could ask that as well. The plan is to address this next year. And what was that plan? Is it to do a study to get an estimate for replacing the insulation?
Yeah, the first thing I'd want to do is bring in a mechanical engineer to speak to the system in its entirety.
Okay.
And they, at that stage, may say, as part of our process, we do air quality testing. But as it was said too, there's really not,
Right.
a limit. But what they'll look for more is they'll look though at things like, the dew point in the rooms and the temperature in the rooms. And they can say this certainly meets conditions that are conducive to mold. And if you're trying to get a 0 on the mold, which you'll never get in any building, but if that's your goal is to try to achieve that, then they may sit there and use that as a means to say, we know we need to do now dehumidification.
Right, but what I'm asking you is, well, your plan was that we have to do this. We're just going to do it next year. And is it to get an estimate next year, to make a plan next year, or to actually?
No, to do the actual work. That's why it's TBD, because once they come back and they're presented with, with documents and a bid package to go and do whatever the services are they suggest we do, then we'd know after the bids comes back how much money it's going to cost us.
Okay,
So it's too much of a question mark for me to even encumber a dollar amount on it, to be honest.
So this is not a situation where you need to bring in a consultant to.
Well, that's essentially what we would do. We would want,
basically bring in
yeah,
a
we would want a
contractor to
mechanical
give you an estimate.
engineer. We would not just want, I don't want an HVAC contractor to come over. No, we want people.
That's for next year. That's how it's slated, for next year. Okay.
So this year, how do we reassure people whose work environment, when they came in, all the surfaces were slimy and wet? How do we reassure people that they're working in a safe environment and that their students are coming into a safe environment?
I mean, other than speaking to what we do as far as cleaning, removing something if it's going to be completely destroyed, taking out the ceiling tiles as soon as we think they're wet, putting in dehumidifiers. I guess I'd pose the question back to the board, what would you like to see done that you think assuages people's concerns?
How have the concerns been expressed? Have they been, are we?
I haven't received anything, so I don't know. I haven't been party to really.
Gina, have you gotten anything? Has anybody complained about it?
So I heard from Mrs. Bilko, the principal, that it may be a concern, but no one has come to me directly.
And we don't have any idea what that, is there any way, I'm overcomplicating this and it's not necessary, but I do want to put this out there. Is there any way, Anthony, that if we went to the town council with this capital reserve request, that we could perhaps earmark it out of our operational budget if we decided to go forward and then go back to capital at another time and just swap something out?
Yes, that's possible.
It's just, I'm trying to be creative, you guys, so, you know.
That's
I mean-
not on the 5-year capital plan, can be taken separately from.
That's my
the
point.
plan and run through for.
You know where I'm going with this, because as we know, when you go to the capital reserve, it's a process. You start with facilities or operations, then you go to the board, then you go to the town council, then you go to the board of finance. Ding, 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 ding. And it's checks and balances to withdraw taxpayer money. It's the way it should be. I don't have a problem with that. But if you're in a bit of a flux and you're not quite sure, can you earmark something out of our general fund, which we could, and then kind of move it around and go back to capital to reimburse that piece? So it's whatever you have planned, Matt, in your facilities budget would be made whole. That's what I'm trying to say. So that could be. Personally, I hear you, Eric. I don't know. I'm not saying that an air quality test isn't relevant, but I think it's something that we could do, and maybe we consider doing that.
It sounds like we're replacing the stuff next year anyway, so if we get it.
Now and then?
But it may
We
assuage-
can't replace the things between now, we can't replace the HVAC between now and then.
We'll breathe in the air.
It may assuage some fears.
Yeah, but so assuage some fears, so if that's what we're gonna do, that's fine, but the worst it might do is stop us from doing this improvements next year. What if, by the time this goes through that process, it's gonna be September, the air's gonna be dry. Right now, there's a lot of moisture out, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but we've had an exceptional summer. What are you gonna do with that information?
The report information?
Yeah, because you're not gonna get that until October.
I don't know how long it takes. I thought it was shorter than that, quite frankly, from what I remember, but I could be wrong.
It's almost September now, and then.
True.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, it's the board's pleasure, how you'd like to handle this. I'll leave it open to anybody's
And I
opinion.
just want to point out, when we talk about chain of command and all, teachers are not encouraged to go and call the superintendent. They're encouraged to go to their principal. So Dr. Perlato would hear from the principal,
Yeah.
not from individual teachers.
I should have said principals.
Okay, just wanted to make sure
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
understood that.
I don't know how much the test would cost, and to your point, Eric, it could take some time, but I'm torn because we want to make sure that our staff and our community feel safe. That's part of our job. And, I think the board has gone on record over the last year at least that this is something we wanted to do, the project, whatever that report comes back at. I certainly have no power to say, let's do it. But if we had an idea of cost, I hope that there's a way that if we approve this 5-year capital plan, if we decide that, or we come to find out that the cost is something that we can absorb, that we move things around and put it into the capital reserve request and send it over to the council. In other words, right now, earmark that test. Send this over as is, approve this capital plan as is, okay? Because capital is a fluid document, we know that, we move it around, we've done it with the town forever. These numbers would be the plan that we're going to ask to withdraw. If we find out what an air test may cost and what the time frame is, block it off in our general fund and backfill that piece through the capital reserve. That would be my recommendation to the board. That's as creative as I got.
I could just one more thing. I would say in the interim, because if it does take time, in the interim, we should know what classrooms are of concern and get out there and let the teachers, let them see that we're taking action right away. Get an extra cleaning in there, whatever you gotta do, dehumidifiers, but show them that we care and let them know that we're on this and we're handling something else that may take a little bit longer, but in the interim, we're looking out for
Are
you.
we comfortable with that theory for the minutes, that that's the way we're gonna, this may not happen, but let's see what the dollar amount is and what the time frame is, but I do think that that's something we should look at, regardless of what the date comes back at, because you're absolutely, I hear all of you, but I also, I wanna make sure that we're, taking a look at that piece. I thought this was really great. Pictures are worth 1,000 words, visual says it all. You've got a lot in this, and over the years, I've seen the capital come before. In the old days, we used to have it come out of the actual budget when we did it. So now we do it a little bit differently, and I happen to like it this way. But it's very well done. We know that our buildings, like at most other municipalities, they're aged buildings. We've got a lot to do, and we're trying to capture all the grant money doing it, plus we're trying to educate our students. So there's a lot going on. So I appreciate it. I think it's well done. But I also would like to thank Matt and Anthony and Dr. Parlato and facilities over the summer, a couple of our meetings with the mayor. We've had these discussions. This capital plan is not too much of a surprise because we've been trying to see what we can do together. So I'm pretty comfortable with it.
I think Mr. Turner does have a few slides.
I am, yep,
Yes,
before I
sorry.
go for motion, but I just
Yes.
wanted, the facilities piece is a, not to take away from that, because we all know that technology is ever changing and can be pricey. So, Mr. Turner, would you like me to get out of the way and, okay.
So the 24-25 capital improvement is, for me, typically, I hit the same points. It's always infrastructure, software, hardware, and then we have some really cool things that we add yearly. So we'll start with the infrastructure. The best analogy is like a good baseball umpire. If you don't see them during the game, that means everything's working nicely. So 2 points. You'll notice 2 things are starred, access points and switches. Those are both category 2 E-ratable, which means we have a 40% cost and 60% is paid by the government. Through the E-rate program, it's a federal group we have every year. It works very nicely. So if we're paying $20,000 for $21,000 for access points, for example, we can guess that we're more than doubling that money. So we're looking at about $45,000 that we can spend for that 21. So we're taking advantage of our funds and going through it. So access points, really 1 point and we're done with it. We can replace 30 devices that are in the 300 series, which are older, and I'm working with our systems analyst, or we could go to the cloud and go, and this is something that's going to happen anyway in the next 2 to 3 years, the technology. Everything's going to be cloud-based for access points. And those who don't know what an access point looks like, there are, up in the ceiling, we have a couple. They're white devices with a green button. If you see green, you're good to go. I can't see the angle, but I think Eric's pointing one right over there. So access points, we're going to make that decision throughout the year. And by January, when we have to put in our E-rate funding, I'll have a better decision on where we're going. It'll be this year or next year. The good thing is we can continue for a couple years with the old 30 that we have, the 300 series, or we can just go straight up and replace those and then go to the cloud next year, but eventually we will have to. Switches, which are the second thing that are E-ratable, we're going to replace up to 12 switches. It'll be the K2 schools that we completely replace. And you'll see on the left side, Mr. Kern is our systems analyst. This is some of the summer work he's did with last year's E-rate money where we replaced servers, switches, and not access points with this, but servers and switches. And you can see the neatness that's now coming up. And you saw Mr. Cunningham's picture of his information. Same thing. Nice and neat, labeled, anybody can go in, we use them, and we're in and out. Firewall is a fixed contract, which is actually tied to our Category 1 with CEN. So that is going to be tied to it in a way that this price will be the same for the next 3 years. We have a 5-year contract. CEN is our internet provider. Really kind of a nonprofit company that started, and still with education, the prices are so much lower than anybody else that you can use. They win the contracts and almost every year. But it really is a great company to work with, and they're adding more features throughout the infrastructure area, including the firewalls. And then we have servers, which, like anything else, needs to be replaced every 5 to 7 years. And we are continually just going to one school, one area, and replace things. Eventually, we're going to look at going more cloud-based in many cases. But right now, we do a mix of cloud and we do actually in-house servers. Second thing is laptops and desktop replacements. I believe we are looking at 15 laptop or desktop replacements. That's not a lot for a school system this size. So it's not truly for replacements. What we're going to be doing this year, we're looking at next year's capital improvement. Some teachers will get laptops. Some are going to get traditional desktops as a replacement. And then the third thing we're looking at is the picture on the right. That's an all-in-one device. And what that is a Wi-Fi desktop. So if you're in the library and you wanted to have a computer sitting here with a traditional desktop, you could move it over here wirelessly and be able to use that. But if you want to then put it on a table and run an Ethernet cord for a backup, just to have a better, quicker service, you have that choice as well. So those teachers who go to this system, and again, we're trialing machines this year, and then we're going to reach out to teachers and get a survey thinking what they want. And I've tried this before, and it works very nicely. But laptops could be on a docking station so that you have wires hooked up. You can pop your laptop, walk away, come back, pop it on, you're good to go. Traditional desktops, we all know what those are. You have your monitors, you have your desktops. And then the non-traditional is the wireless devices that we're going to trial this year. Another advantage that teachers love with the non-traditional wireless, less wires. You can go wireless keyboard and mouse, you can go everything wireless, Bluetooth, and you just have no wires, you can carry things as you go. I can tell you right now the teachers would be thrilled. One note I have on there for next year is most of our desktops are 7 to 9 years old. Traditionally, you start replacing in 5 years. So we are, with many machines, living at a 2015 machine in 2024. So we've gotten a lot of use out of our machines. Next one is AV projects. Since I've gotten here, we've been really looking at our AV. This room is a great example of what we've done. And the two that we're going to be looking at this year are Hill and Plain, the stage, which is used for many different things, including lunch every day. If you look at the devices on there, they are from the 70s. The mics, the sound system, everything is from the 70s. And then secondly, we're going to look at Sarah Noble. If you've never been to the multi-purpose room, there really isn't anything. So when Ms. Bilko has school-wide assemblies, they're bringing in devices and carrying them upstairs and bringing them in. We're going to set up using the existing wall. We're going to get a laser projector that actually uses the wall as a screen, set up a good sound system that's worthy of that room. And at that point, that should be a really usable room, not only for us, but also for community use. And like everything else we're doing, we're setting things up with a simple Crestron screen where if you want sound, you touch it, bring it up and down. If you want to use a mic, you mute it or use it. Same thing with the video. You touch the video, it's on. No mics, no handheld projectors, no anything. It's just simply set up so that anybody can use it. And we do lock those so people can't go into them. Next thing with next year's capital improvement, The only good thing about the fire a few years ago was it started us on an implementation of reducing and replacing all the smart boards. We started with 53 at the high school a week before school started 2.5 years ago. And since then, with capital improvement, with everybody's help, we've been able to replace almost 90%. With 20 more with capital improvement, that should put us at close to 95 or better % across the board. We've touched every educational classroom. Now we're kind of going into some of the rooms that are quasi. That one year might be a classroom, the next year it might be used for something else. But because those rooms are used often for classrooms, we're going to touch those. We've touched other rooms, such as speech and therapy rooms, where kids are coming in small groups, but they still need that kind of device. So anything that was replaceable, we're pretty much 90 to 95% there. Chromebooks, ECF happened about 1.5 years ago, and we got more machines than I've ever seen in my life at one time, and we're looking very good on the replacements. And with the devices we are looking at yearly, we should be good for another year before we start looking at capital improvement in 26, 27 as a cost to continue one-to-one. We are already starting with K2 last year, where they are very simply keeping them in the classrooms, not carrying them. If you've ever seen a kindergartner with a strap on the shoulder, the bag's touching the floor, we're past COVID at this point, and use-wise, it goes down, but breakage also goes down and replacement costs go down. A good Chromebook should last you 6-7 years, and in this case, the ones we did get in ECF 1.5 years ago will last till 2032 under warranty. So we're looking pretty good there. The 30 units, K2 are touchscreen, the 3 through 12, 100 units for breakage during the year, and yes, we are doing better every year with charging students if it's broken on their end, but if it's accidental, if you have a kindergartner who trips in the classroom and drops it, not their fault, we don't carry that. So we use very good judgment on when we charge, and then we put that money back into our accounts and we buy parts. So a $20 screen versus sending it out for $200 to replace is a much better deal for everybody. Next one. The theater's under my guise. Mr. Amenta does really all the work with it. But 1.5 years ago, we started with looking at replacing the projector. Last year, we did a lot of work on the sound. Hopefully, it sounded good on the plays. In the next 3 years, the big work is the stuff you won't notice as much. Number one, it's going to be the lighting system, and then the wiring. The wiring is very important because the wiring is from the, I guess, early, 1990 when we started? 2000, when the school opened. It was XLR cables, which are these thicker wires that have 3 prongs on the end. What you want now is HDMI, USB, things of that nature. Even USB is old now, but USB-C is probably where we're going to go. And those devices are plug and play as opposed to having certain devices you can plug into. And then PLTW, really that's just replacements for broken machines at the high school. I think it's $5,000 across the board for laptops or desktops, things that are broken throughout the school year. They can't be replaced because they have very high-end machines to run those programs that they do. And that's, I believe, the last thing, the questions regarding IT capital improvement. Yes, sir.
Good question. With all the computers and systems district-wide, the numbers that way, is it worthwhile to have any insurance, any type of electronic insurance, or is that not a smart thing to have?
That's with Chromebooks you're talking about?
Chromebooks, I just saw something here. What kind of electronics? I don't know if they have a blanket electronic. They used to years ago have like a blanket electronics. Like Assurant used to offer an electronic.
A lot of the companies have gone under who do that. There's probably a good 5 or 6 companies that still do it. Chromebooks, during COVID, it was very popular. But what we've done, because we have techs, we pretty much have to fix things ourselves. A Chromebook only has 2 things that can break, usually the keyboard or the screen. There's really no chips inside it. It's one small little chip. Occasionally you'll have kids where the ports are, where they snap it because they have, for example, a mouse plugged in or their headsets. And they close it quickly or move quickly and it'll yank the port. But even the better devices now have 2 places where you can use that because they've gotten smarter, understanding that these things happen, and it's one of those deals where you can't change the motherboard. So it's not worth it like a computer. On a computer, really the only things that's going to go wrong is your memory and your hard drive. And those things are so inexpensive to buy now compared to the old days. I can buy an SSD drive to replace an old drive for these PCs that we have for $35. And then our techs and our tech 2 take over and do images, set them up, and they're good to go again. It's almost like dropping a new engine in a car. So personally, I haven't looked at that just because of the cost and because we have people who can do the work.
Yeah, and every machine's not breaking, so.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions on capital? Okay, I'm going to put a motion out there. I'll need a motion to approve the 24-25 5-year capital plan.
So moved.
And Dean is the second. Any other questions? All those in favor? Thank you. So we'll send over a letter and request to go to council and Board of Finance, and I'll keep the board updated, okay?
Tomorrow morning.
Yep, thank you. All right, let's go with, I'm going to put the motion on the table. We have a memo that goes with this. I'll need a motion to approve the additional enrollment-driven position using general fund dollars, Excel preschool.
Thank you. So,
I need, that's the motion. I need to someone to.
too excited.
No, that's okay. I know you're excited. Tammy, you're the main, Leslie's the second, so it's Tammy and Leslie for the minutes. Thank you. Dr. Parlato, go ahead. I didn't mean to
Sorry about
interrupt you.
that.
No, that's okay.
False start, they call that. So there's a memo in the packet regarding this, and I have Ms. Olson here tonight and Ms. Clark, who's supervisor of special education. And so the memo is about our request of 1.0 FTE special education teacher for our Excel preschool program, and that would be a 0.5 for Hill and Plain and a 0.5 for Northville, and then 4 paras to go along with that. These staff members, as it said, were not budgeted for the 24-25 school year. So the rationale is as follows. There's increased numbers in both schools, as you can see in the chart. So you can see the first column is the school, the second column is 21-22, how many students were in the program at the end of the year. And then you can see the projections for 22-23 and how that ended up turning out. And then you can see for 24-25, there's a much larger number of projections in both schools. So as you can see, there were 58 plus referrals that were received after October 1st, 2023, which is why we didn't have this in the general fund budget to begin with, because so many referrals came in the late fall and early winter. So in order to comply with the inclusive setting, meaning that don't forget, in Excel preschool, we have students who have IEPs and we have the community friends. So to be able to have both of those in an inclusive classroom, we need to expand the number of classrooms that we have. You could see that there are 18 students who will remain in Excel, and that's because of that kindergarten legislation. Yeah. So there are students who are born after September 1st who have to remain in Excel because they're not old enough yet. So that expanded the class size. And, you know, an important point is that the needs of the students, and Ms. Wilson and Ms. Clark can speak to this as well, the needs of the students are more complex and more severe than we've seen in very young children. So, Ms. Wilson, if you'd like to.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Parlato, and that it's really true. A lot of our referrals, most of them come from birth to 3, and usually it's a developmental delay, but they're coming to us with already a diagnosis of autism. So that requires much more intense services, usually speech and language, OT, PT, and so we need to meet those needs. And this is unprecedented. Well, I shouldn't say unprecedented. It did happen 6 years ago. I came to the board asking for additional Excel services because of this, not this exact situation, but where we didn't know 18 months ago what was going to be happening in terms of budgets or needs, and especially for, you know, our preschool population, our 3-year-olds.
So not only are there significant behavioral needs, there's also, as you can see in the memo, there's significant medical needs for little small children, which is hard, of course. And the behavioral needs are also so severe that we need to have our board certified behavior support for those small children. And at least 24 of those students require one-to-one paraprofessional support. So that's the certainly they need somebody with them all the time. The anticipated cost, as you can see, with salary and benefits, approximately $95,000. And for paraprofessionals, approximately $80,000. We are asking to add this to the general fund budget. And so we know that we've hired some new teachers at a lower rate than the ones who may have left or retired. So we know we have a little room in the salary line there in order to cover this.
So that was my question. Benefits were included because it didn't specify that it give the dollar amount. Obviously, that can be a piece.
Yes.
I'm glad you just.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
We did not budget for this. We've been in this situation before. And to bring it, first of all of our votes in public, especially financial, everything's in public. And the numbers warrant the need. I mean, the need, it all works. But this is after our budget. It's happened before. And we need to supply the rationale for doing that. We started our budget 18 months ago.
Yeah.
So who knew? So these are large amount of referrals. I mean, they're large. You know, I had to look at that and go,
We just had 2 more in the last week, so we're
Okay.
hoping that we can meet the needs of these students and that we, we can come back to you.
as we know when we, and Sarah, you'll be next, as we know when we pull something out of the general fund, obviously, we didn't plan for this. We just have to move some things around and we have to be careful. Sarah?
Just a question, Laura. Does Birth to 3 regularly communicate with school systems right along? Because I know this, as I was reading it the other day, it was a sort of a surprise. So I was wondering if they communicate with you regularly. Are these new people that have moved to town recently, or was it a mixture of things?
It's a combination. Sometimes parents are not aware, so they need
Right.
some help.
Right.
Sometimes it's preschools. The Birth to 3 we work with very closely. In fact, we start tracking these young ones when they're 2 years old already.
Yeah.
We've been watching this data since April.
How do you do that?
So we have a Birth to 3 coordinator that works with us, or a number of them, and then Mrs. Schaefer, she's our inclusion facilitator who coordinates Excel, works very closely with them. Mrs. Clark, did you have anything more you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, just on the new state system, CT says, they've always been able to give us this report, but it's easier to access them. They will give us the amount of referrals that are pending, that parents have for kids 2.5 and under. So we might know of a little person, child that even as an infant, but the parent might not have signed the release yet to share to the school. And then usually from 2.5 and beyond is when Birth to 3 is encouraging parents to make sure they're signing that release. If they can get them to sign earlier, they will. So we have 2 points of data that are there. Sometimes it's just a number, and we don't know whether it's Hill and Plain or Northville because we don't have the address and the name yet. But we have the birthday and we have the number of kids. So we know there's kids already under 2.5 years old that will be coming.
What's the youngest age they'll diagnose autism now?
It really depends on the medical provider who will do the diagnosis. It could be as young. I've never seen anything younger than 2. Have you?
Usually it's 2 and beyond.
Okay.
But very often, as the Wilson had said, is that kids with cognitive developmental delay, the state allows that classification up until age 6.
Yes.
And then, but recently, because of all those wonderful resources and the pediatricians working closely with families around kids with autism, they're getting a lot of good help before they enter the school system.
Right.
So now what's happening is kids are already coming in with a classification, and so we're kind of taking it from there.
So I have a question. If this passes, which I suspect it will, are we ready to fill it? Are we ready to go?
Well, certainly we'd have to post the position.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
we're pretty confident that we'd be able to fill it relatively soon.
Yes,
We have 1 week.
we do.
I don't mean, I know I'm pushing you guys really, but I just,
No pressure at all, right?
So I was curious that, approving it is one thing, facilitating it is another, so. Any other questions? Yeah, and I'm sorry, go ahead, and then, go ahead, Eric, go ahead.
What about the paras? Are we going to be able to fill those positions right away? I know.
Who knows?
Good question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
So let's propose how we're going to offset these costs. We definitely need it. It'd be great to offset it with some non-education related recurring costs, or as you said, you may be hiring some folks to replace people who are paid higher or not, but I'd like to see that math now rather than March when we're going to budget and have it get lost. I know, because we went through a lot of pain cutting people this last time, and it wasn't fun.
No.
Now I see them getting added for a darn good reason, but how about we address it now so we have a plan?
Well, to that point, some of the conundrum last year, I think, was the Esser Cliff, where things being passed and we couldn't take on 13 and a half positions. That was just not going to happen. So it's an excellent point. You know that you have the salary account, which is the largest component of our budget. Is that fair to say? That we can take a look at those numbers. And this is where the board, I think, does a great job. Because Eric, you are chair of the committee that sees those numbers every month. Every month, snapshot to snapshot. And if we ever get in a situation where we have to transfer for whatever reasons, we do that. And that's what we're encouraged to do. So to your point, I hear you. We have to be careful because we're taking on something we haven't budgeted, but we may save in other line items. So the salary account, and each month we go through this report, and usually to your point, what? March, we'll say, okay, where are we and where's the hot area? Where do we have to stop? The stop sell kind of thing. So we'll watch that, and of course you will, because you're right there.
Yeah.
That's not what you're looking for?
I'm very skeptical. I mean, this is a problem that I saw coming a couple of years ago with the school-based health clinic. We're going to bring that in now. At the time, we were promising, basically committing ourselves to recurring costs. We have a clinic there that's not self-sufficient. We have a lost opportunity here in that we can actually, by having them cover the secretarial support we give them, all the facility support, the electrical, the internet that we give them for free, and the square footage that we give them for free, if they were to start paying a fair market price for that, we could easily cover things like this, and I suspect we're going to have some other issues too. We have a lot of English as second language students coming along. We're going to find ourselves having to get more teachers. I just don't want us to be in a position during budget season where we have to let go of teachers in order to maintain a school-based health clinic when we could have taken care of that now by just simply having them pay for the secretarial support, pay for their facilities, and pay for the square footage.
So it's my understanding that that is on the agenda for next month, that discussion of just the topic. Okay?
That is right.
So that's on the board agenda next month.
Okay.
Okay? So that takes care of that piece. I hear you. I think that this is not unique, sadly, when you create budgets 18 months in advance, whether it's on the educational side or a town side, you have changes that happen. And at the end of the day, we can't be in a deficit. We're held financially, personally responsible when we are in a deficit. The only board in the state of Connecticut. So, we watch that. I know, Eric, that there have been times where we've looked at line items. Let's take a look at something a little bit more easy to read. Legal account. We've had more mediations, more negotiations, more issues, coming out of COVID where our legal account ran over our retainer. We couldn't have predicted that 18 months in advance. Had to do it. But we also can, in a $73 million budget, we can make those adjustments, but be very transparent about it. I hear you about, being very careful line item. But is it fair to say that at this point, we can absorb this component?
Yes.
That's what I go with at this time. And we need it. So, but I think that at each time when we hear about grants we've applied for, initiatives we've applied for, collaborating on capital projects with the town, whatever we do, that frees us up to at least protect our operational budget. So you're 100% right. But the school-based health centers is next month. But that's just my opinion. Anybody have any questions on the budgetary impact of this? Okay. Anybody?
First and a second. Yep, we're good.
Leslie, you're good?
I'm good.
Okay. All those in favor? That's unanimous, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. We're going to go on to policy, I believe. I need a motion to approve the following policies: 4118.113, the policy regarding prohibition of sex discrimination, including sex-based. 4218.113, harassment certified, non-certified personnel. 5145.7, policy regarding prohibition of sex discrimination, including sex-based harassment, students.
So moved.
Tammy?
Second.
And this is first read approval, as Leslie said. Thank you for that. That's important. Any questions? All those in favor? Thank you. So that'll be good to go. And then curriculum, and there is a lot of it. Yeah. I'll need a motion to approve the following curriculum: art appreciation, basic life support, concert chorus, ESL 1, exercise
Physiology.
It's been a long day. Explorations in science, French 1 CP, French 4-5 college prep, integrated science CP, integrated science honors, math grade A, 7A, nutrition and wellness, PE boot camp, physics CP, AP physics 1, Spanish 1 CP. Holy moly, that's a lot. Okay, I put it out there. Can someone move it?
So moved.
Second.
That is
and Eric.
Tom and Eric, and that's a lot. That's a lot.
It's a lot of good work in curriculum.
Yep, thank you, Ms. Holly.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tammy.
Well done.
Holland.
Okay, any questions on that? All those in favor? That's it. Okay, so now we're going to discuss the board goals. I'm going to move out. I'm going to move out of the way.
No, that's okay. We can stay right where I think
Okay.
so. So I just distributed them. This is our latest draft. And I took into account the feedback that I received from members. And you can see that we have them divided into those categories. You can take a look at how those are stated at this point. And so, you know, keeping in mind that the point of this is that the rest of the work of the school district essentially flows from this document, which is tremendously exciting.
Can I just ask a real quick question, and this is just a grammar thing? This is,
Tell me where you are.
sorry, I'm looking at the difference in the colors. Some are black and some are gray, and I want to make sure that that is not necessarily meaning that one's more important than the other.
Yeah,
It
no,
should
no,
all
that's just
be
the way
the
it printed.
same. Okay.
Yeah, they just,
Okay.
I don't know why I printed them.
Just a point that these.
It looks like it's on here as well, so it just looks like you need to
Yeah,
go
no,
back
we'll-
and choose
we'll
black.
fix
Just-
that.
I don't want
Yep.
people to think that, wait, that's more important than this, and that's
Oh,
grayed
no.
out because it's a,
No.
yeah.
I was just going to say that these goals were here in front of us because of the board working together to come up with these, and everyone contributed to this. The mayor was here at this meeting. We're all here, and it's great when we can put our opinions out there and our thoughts out there and have, you know, a real plan.
Carlotta, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for distilling that into something really sensible and good.
Right. And these are going to go up on our website.
For sure, we already made a graphic,
Great.
ready to
We're
go.
ready to go?
Instagram ready.
Okay, we're ready to put it out there. Any other questions on that? So, all those in favor? Thank you.
Did we have a first?
Make a
we-
motion?
I don't think we had a first and a second.
Did we put the motion out there?
No.
I don't think so.
Okay, we're adopting them, aren't we?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Yes. So I'll need a motion to adopt the boards as presented at this meeting. That's Leslie and that's Dean. All those in favor? Thank you. Thank you for that. Okay,
That's a big deal.
It is a very big deal.
I just have to say that. That's a big deal to have those.
it is.
So exciting.
You made it easy.
It was a good meeting, and this really comes from the whole year of, you know, putting our thoughts together. It wasn't just in one night. So.
Correct.
I'll need a motion to approve the potential partial use of 2% ECS set-aside funding.
So moved.
Second.
Tom and Leslie, sorry, I'm losing my voice. We have a memo outlining this.
That is correct. Yes, so I'll review parts of that memo.
Yep.
As you know, we have 2% ECS set-aside funding this year. And so that is something that we can utilize certainly with the board's approval. And so what I'm presenting to you this evening is a one-year position, meaning it would last for 1 year. It's 1.0 school counselor for Schaghticoke. This was a position that was originally funded through ESSER. It was a position that we eliminated as part of our budget development process. However, we know that the need is still there in terms of the behavioral health needs of the students, the social emotional health needs of the students, the developmental guidance piece of it, the career exploration piece that aligns with the high school's work. You can see the caseload numbers there. Without the position, each counselor has 224 students, which is on the high side. School counselors are the case managers for students who have 504 plans. And you can see that there are 70 students with such plans at Schaghticoke. Interestingly, like our conversation with the Excel preschool, the needs of the students are more severe that we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. That's not only for 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, it's also true of young adolescents. And having a school counselor in that position will certainly assist with that. For sure, we've been working hard at Schaghticoke on the culture of the school and shoring things up there in terms of student behavior. And the counselor, in my opinion, will help with that as a one-year position.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Tony.
So it's deemed a one-year position, but is the intent to roll it into the operational fund for the next year? Because I'm not thinking that this is going to be all cleared up in 1 year. I think that middle school, especially, is a place where you need more support for students and these behaviors, which are just getting worse. So I'm kind of wondering what the 1 year carve-out is.
Yeah, I come to you in good faith, right? And so the reason that we would like it to be 1 year position is that if we are going to put it if I'm going to put it in my proposed budget, I want to make sure that I have plenty of data behind that, plenty of rationale, plenty of explanation. And so it's my job to be able to convince you of that. And so having it as a 1 year position allows us to gather that information for the first few months of the school year.
Okay.
And then I will determine if I put that in my proposed budget or not, or if you want to say.
Because we will be seeing that budget in January.
For sure. Oh, yes, yes.
Okay.
So
I'm in favor of this, no doubt. They need help at Schaghticoke.
I think that middle school students in general are certainly could use as much support as they can get as they enter the adolescence time. So again, when I eliminated this position from ESSER, this is the one that hurt me because I knew that the need was still there, but we still wanted to be fiscally responsible at the same time. So given the fact that we have the 2% and we're fortunate to have that, this is my proposed use of part of that money. The total that we have, I think, is 236.
23109.
23109, yeah, 3. So this would be, with salary and benefits, it would be $90,000. So that would still leave us 100 and, I can't even do math at this point, 160, yeah, 120 left. Which I haven't proposed anything else for that yet, just so everyone knows.
Any other questions? I mean, this is exactly how we laid it out at our June meeting. This was the plan, that if any part of that grant set aside would come to the board for a vote.
Yes.
That it wasn't, with no disrespect, going to be that, it was said and done. It was going to be voted through the board, captured in a separate account, and that's exactly what we're doing. So, anybody? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, that's it for the action items. We're going to run through some items of information. The employment report. You can see I have a lot of light reading here, so if I get my papers here, sorry.
789 pages.
So we've had several resignations recently. You'll see them on there. There's about 8 of them. We're doing pretty well with filling them. I know that teachers start tomorrow. We have, I was going to say 4, but now 6 open positions. Thank you for the extra 2 to fill. We do have some interviews on those. I got some information from Ray on the business one, which is a tough one to fill today. So I think we are not bad. Not bad.
Sarah?
I noticed on the sheet that one of the people hired, it doesn't specifically state a school
I'm
that they're
sorry.
assigned to.
Which one is
It
that?
just says math teacher at New Milford Public School, so I was just wondering if you hadn't decided where that person is going, or...
I thought it was the high school, but
Yeah, that would be the high school. I apologize.
That's a good catch.
Oh, no problem. I just wondered if maybe you needed the person, but you weren't sure where you were putting
Nope.
them.
Oh, no, we always know.
Sorry, that's just,
That's a high school position?
Yeah.
History teacher.
And the resignations, I see we're holding them to the 30 days.
we are.
Keep in mind, that's a courtesy, that there's nothing in the legislation that allows that. That's a courtesy between superintendents. Sometimes it doesn't necessarily always work out like that.
Nope.
I,
Certainly where we can.
I would like to say, it's always tough to see this page, but there are some resignations on here that are just hurtful to the core. We're losing some very, very important, dedicated, people. I'm so sad, I'm very sad.
yeah.
Would you like to say a few words about the trends that you're seeing in the resignations?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I do when each person leaves, we're required to send a survey from the state. That started in January of this year. We do that. It's a pretty basic survey about kind of what you're doing. What I also do is offer them the opportunity to talk to me directly, to say, kind of talk to me about why you're leaving. Most of the trends that I am seeing are salary-based.
Salary-based.
Without a doubt. There are people who absolutely didn't want to leave, who were sad about leaving, but the salary that they can garner someplace else was
A lot higher. A lot higher.
I would say the average was probably $28,000.
Yeah.
So I just want to, that's a tough number to compete with.
It is.
And I hear you, Tammy. It's very hard for us to look at because they're part of our family. But when you're offered a position and you're making $28,000 more, it's a family conversation. It's real money.
And just to ask, that someplace else is often pretty close, correct?
Often, yes.
Yes.
So,
It's not like they're going to Greenwich for.
correct.
Good point,
We're
Tom.
not losing them to Greenwich or Weston or Westport.
Ridgefield even.
Actually, one was to Greenwich, but oftentimes it's relatively
Fairfield.
closer.
Right?
Danbury has been a big kind of swap this year. That's the one we're seeing.
It's tough. It's a real challenge. So thank you for bringing that up. The enrollment report.
As you know, the summer enrollment report is not necessarily the best to judge by. It's still a lot of in and out and switching and new
October.
kids coming in. So it's October 1st that you get your best snapshot. Not all the kindergarten students are into this number yet either, so.
Okay, regulation updates. They're all named. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, and the high school update, the roof.
I'm sorry, on the regulation updates?
Sure, go ahead, Dean.
On the part that we had left in there, we had a conversation during our subcommittee on policy.
Which regulation are you referring to?
Racial imbalances.
Okay,
For the attendance areas. Tammy had made a great point at the end of our conversation there, and I think she was spot on. I want to thank her for making that statement, because it's important that I think that the public knows why this is in here. I forget the name of our attorneys, but this is in here because it was a recommendation of theirs, correct, to put this?
you're referring to the term legally required or something like that.
So you're speaking about that piece of the regulation?
Correct.
About racial balance?
Correct.
Yes.
That was put in because our attorneys suggested that.
That's part of the model regulation that they provide us, yes.
Correct. And I think it's important that, parents and everyone knows that that's part of a state requirement, it's a state regulation, and not an endorsement of the board, and not a position of the board necessarily. I'm not saying it's not, but I think there should be some added language to it. Something that says it doesn't necessarily reflect or endorse a regulation or a policy of the board. I know it does state, and pretty clearly, that the state
It's mandated, right?
It's
That's mandated.
statute, but, you know, it may be a statement in the statute, but when I first saw it, my first impression, and I'm not necessarily the poster boy for what everyone else is gonna feel, but I felt it was almost an implied endorsement having this in here when it didn't need to be. But like I said, as Tammy pointed out, I think it is important that it is in here, that parents do understand it is a state mandate, a state regulation. It's not something from the board. So again, thank you for that. But I would love to have some kind of language in there that does state that it's not necessarily a position of the boards. It is, just to be specific, it is not a position of the boards necessarily, but it's a state mandate.
Are you speaking about that paragraph in particular?
Correct.
Okay. So that, certainly I would have to discuss that with Attorney Shuren, only because we could write that for
I was just about to
every
say that.
single regulation.
It's
There's a paragraph in every
And
regulation.
it's in our budget. If you take a look at our policy, if you take a look at our policies, you'll often see, legal reference as mandated. It's a common theme as to why you're having that policy, because it is the law. Whether you agree with the policy or not, it is the law. It's mandated.
It's a sensitive issue. It's a very sensitive issue, I think, and I'm not sure what all the other policies, I'm sure they're sensitive to the others as well, but this is a particularly sensitive issue. And anything that calls out and makes note of the fact that there are differences between who we're going to allow or who we're going to not allow for whatever reasons into our area, of our school districts, based on their color or their ethnicity. To me, that's particularly egregious a statement to take from the state, and I want to ensure that we are separated from such just irresponsible, in my opinion, types of statements and regulations that are now part of our charter or our regulations. So I want to just make sure that there is a separation between what the board is saying and what the state is saying.
Anybody?
One of the things that I think that does at least happen, if I've been down this road before with an attorney, at least it's reflected in the minutes.
Well, that's it.
We see this, it's a culture of soft racism, and it's still racism, and that has never ended well. But I think that, the best we can do sometimes is it's mandated by the state, but we can object to it as, and call it out for what it is, but at the end of the day, we're kind of stuck with it right now.
Oh, I understand that. It's just an abhorrent policy to me.
It's
like
terrible.
it is so antithetical to everything I believe and everything I believe to be fair and equitable, to use that term equitable in its proper sense, that it just rubbed me the wrong way. But if you're saying, if everyone here believes that it's fair enough, it's good enough, it's in the minutes, and it would be too much of a problem to put some kind of changes into the wording and the regulation that would really emphasize a separation of the board's position from the states, then okay, then I'll go along with you. But
And ask that your comments be reflected in the minutes so that they are captured.
thank you.
They're capped usually when someone makes a statement and that that is very strongly against, I shouldn't say against, but in connotation to the subject that we have, they're captured in the minutes, so they'll be reflected.
Got that, Ms. Ellard?
Got it.
And I'll make sure when we look at them that you are quoted properly.
And I will as well.
So we're good. Okay, I apologize. The high school update. The roof.
Yeah, I baked that into actually a slideshow that
Now I'm
speaks to
moving.
some of those large projects and speaks to some of the projects we've also completed this year. So, with the roof here, so what you'll see here is these are the standing seams here that they're actually removing. I actually have some samples here and did a mock-up of the roof here we could look at. And so they remove that one seam, and then they're able to sit there and pivot back the panel and expose. These are the infamous clips we've been speaking about.
Oh.
And as you can see, these are the deficiencies with the missing screw.
Oh, okay.
And is he like communicating? They were going to count how many on the thing?
You talk.
The infamous.
There you go.
You know how you feel about that?
Oh my God, here we go. It's around show and tell.
So, Mr. Cunningham made this himself.
Oh, jeez.
No, it's just a mock-up of the house. So this is, not to scale, but this is what our roof is. We have metal decking underneath, we have isopoly insulation, we probably have about 5-6 inches of it, plywood, then we have ice and water. This is the roofing system that sits on top of it. These are the clips. It actually, these panels aren't screwed down to it. They are clipped into these clips. The clips are screwed into the roof. So that allows this to actually expand and contract here and not be bound to the roof. And you want that because those, you're looking at 55-foot long panels there in that picture. They can expand on a hot summer day up to an inch. So if they're bound, then you will see this now. Now you have an eye for it. So you'll go and notice the roofs that are where they're affixed to the roof itself, the panels, they call it oil canning actually. You'll see the ribbing where on a hot summer day it wants to expand, it can't, so this then starts to bulge. So we have a really good roof system. The deficiency was that, obviously you can see from the picture, screws were missing and some of these clamps were missing.
Wow.
It's also a great system because it doesn't sit technically on it. There's a little space in here so you can get airflow and air movement to help try to keep these cool. God forbid, if you were to get some moisture, some wind-driven rain somehow were to make it past this, you have the layer of water and ice and you have air that can move through here and keep it dry. So it's a good system when done properly. The only thing we're replacing is this, thank you, the actual seam cap here.
Got it.
And this is what joins these two panels together. So right now,
So that's the infamous cap we've been
this is the
talking
infamous
about?
cap. You'll see there's two.
Okay.
So this comes from the factory there. It already has these two strips of butyl on it. And that's the glue, and that goes over and combines then and joins these two panels. It then gets crimped on top of it. So that's what's holding the panels together.
That's what we were concerned was going to be destroyed.
Yeah, we were concerned.
Coming off.
I think that part of it has been very advantageous during these extremely hot summer days because it does make this a little more pliable. And so they've noticed when we're pulling these back that it's a lot less labor intensive to get these off. And at that stage, there's enough flex in this panel that they can pop this panel out, as you can see in the picture on the left, pivot it up, check how many screws, and so just to let you know, and I'll go to the next slide. So it is documented every panel, how many clips it had, how many screws it has, how many they've replaced. To date, they've done about 1/3 of the roof that was suspect, which was about 40% of the entire roof.
How much have they done? I'm sorry. How much of the
They've
roof?
done about 1/3 of the roof,
Okay.
so.
3% of the 40.
It needed to be redone.
So they've completed on this, you can see here, over the large gym, roof A. This is over the cafeteria B is completed, the canopy here C, and I believe they're down here now finishing
Wow.
up, work on the rest of this.
So they're putting the screws, any missing screws in.
To date, they've replaced over 1,000 screws.
That
And
was
it's consistent, right, Matt?
100
They're
clips.
finding these missing screws all the way through. It's not like.
Yeah, so what you see highlighting yellow, what was done prior to the fire, and that was done by the original contractor, and so all this was suspect, I guess, for lack of better words.
Yeah.
We've confirmed by doing this roof and these two other roofs that it was a systemic problem with the screws missing and some clips missing.
Oh, jeez.
So how many were missing so far?
I mean, to date, they've done, a rough estimate is probably over 1,000 screws that they've added and a couple hundred clips. So it was warranted that we, in the town, held our position that we didn't want to see the scope changed, that we wanted to see the original specifications of this project come to fruition here, so.
How do you miss a clip? Missing a screw, well, systemically missing a screw, like, seems.
No, certainly the sheer volume that we've come across that are missing would, I'm sure Garland, the manufacturer of this product, that they would not have been giving us.
Okay with just, yeah. Absolutely.
Wow, that's a lot.
So Matt, do you know how many panels they have? Well, I'm sorry, you've already told us how many they've done, all the panels on.
So no, they go through every panel.
That's right.
I couldn't give you the count on how many panels, there's been several hundred panels.
Actually, what I wanted to ask is, how many panels have they had to replace?
Not too many. They're, as you can see, they're pretty rigid panels. They have the ribbing in them, so they're fairly resilient. So to date, I don't know if they've had to replace any that were damaged to speak of.
Because I know
We do have a fairly good inventory of those panels, attic stock you would kind of call it. So there's been no cost incurred with any panels. So I don't know about any panels that they've replaced. There may have been one that I'm not privy to in the project, but they're not replacing panels.
They're replacing the caps.
It's the caps that they're replacing.
They've got a good system in place, and
They do. They're moving along at a good pace.
that's
Go ahead.
Are they gonna spot check the remaining 60% of the roof that the other company did? Are we gonna check that, or?
No, we've seen no sign that there was anything there. It was brought to the attention, I think there was a lot more eyes on it after
Right.
that deficiency was noticed, so there was no concern that that wasn't installed properly.
So, if I heard you correctly, we had estimated it was a certain percentage, but it's larger than what we thought.
Well, we had estimated, we knew that everything you see highlighted in yellow
Right.
was subject to what we were questioning.
Right.
As far as, we never really had a grasp, we knew that there was a consistent inconsistency, if that makes sense, that we knew that we were missing screws and we knew we were missing clips, but we've never really had a grasp on the totality of it. But now as we're going through panel by panel, we're seeing that it's
a lot.
a significant number.
The reason it was found is because they could look up at one point
Well-
to the
No,
roof.
I mean, as far as this.
In places you can't look.
Highlighted roof, yes.
So if it's systemic, then does that imply that it was purposely omitted?
I mean, I wouldn't be able to comment on that.
You know, yeah, but,
Because if every panel, or if a majority of panels are missing a screw, it becomes.
but to that point, when we began all this conversation, should we, shouldn't we? Should the town do it? What's gonna happen? Remember, we had the conversation, this is gonna open up. You know, this is an example, at least I think,
Sorry about that.
you know, it's a horrible situation. This has been dreadful for the town. It's been very disruptive. But we're finding that this was worse than what we thought. And we have an obligation to correct it, and the town's doing that.
Well, I think
And
it's confirming what our concerns, that we didn't know what we didn't know.
we had real
know the
concerns
extent of the
because we didn't know the extent.
And our major concern was safety for the people in the building and what would happen if we happened to get a harsh storm come in. So as much as it's horrible that it had to have happened, I'm glad that we're getting it
We're getting there.
fixed.
Thank you.
And so, one last question. Since school's starting next week, are you confident that they have a good plan to not?
No, I mean, we've done this before.
Yeah.
No, we're comfortable, you know, once we're over this area here and that's completed, that's the only area that's over classrooms, and even that is insulated by the fact that there's a fourth floor with a lot of HVAC equipment there.
Right.
Most of the sound that we were coming through on the project that was disruptive was really when you're tearing off the old 3-tab shingles. Typically, putting the screws in, because you're so far removed, we're not noticing any sound. You wouldn't even really hear it. And then once we get to these areas here, we're talking about a wood shop, chorus, the theater, which is predominantly empty during the day, so we're not thinking it's going to have too much of a negative impact on our day-to-day operations. That's why they focus on getting this canopy where most of the students come in, the gym done where we're doing activities. So those areas where we have a lot of foot traffic at the beginning and the end of the day, we feel that those are out of the way.
Outstanding.
Matt, thank you for putting that thing together, because that really
On
showed
Saturday.
what
We've been talking about for a couple
hearing
years,
this
I said, I can't
exactly.
get everybody up on that roof. So I felt it was easier to kind of bring it
That
to
really
us.
showed us, yeah, now I know what a cap looks like.
And now it'll be
This cap.
safe, and we're gonna have the engineers gonna sign off on this, and
Get the guarantee.
That's actually, actually an excellent point, because we've, Anthony, Matt, Dr. Palato, myself, we've sat with the mayor. Not only is it the roof project, making sure the paperwork is done and following through on the reimbursement. So there's a lot going on here. It's great to have the project done and safe, but now we need to go after what is due.
Yeah, no, we're confident this will ensure that we get our warranty, which was sort of the linchpin in getting our reimbursement from the state.
Great. That is very helpful. Did you have a lot of fun putting that together? I was going to say, because so when you brought it in, I'm like, what is that? So good.
So this is the gym floor. This was redone
Awesome.
in the summer. This is the out with the old and in with the new.
Wow.
Gorgeous.
Wow.
When's the field trip to go see it?
That is
Definitely,
nice.
this is the new collegiate
Wow.
logo we put there for the NM here. A lot of people, this
That gray's
doesn't really do it justice. This is a light gray, that 3-point arc. If anyone watches basketball on the college level, you'll see this is the new trend to stain this and to really, it pops, for lack of better words. So we're
gorgeous.
excited about this floor.
So
for
sweet.
Athletes to finally have it in place.
Wait till the students see it. Oh, that's going to be exciting.
This was and so I'm just going through random projects we've been going through over the summer here. This was the wrestling mat hoist that we replaced this year. This is our Noble oil tank, the 10,000 gallon oil tank that was approved.
Wow.
Closure paperwork
The agenda.
was sent up to the state. The NOV that we received was revoked, and so this project is complete.
Did you take that with the drone?
Yes.
Thank you for getting that done. The nice aerial view gives a whole nother perspective.
The size of that.
The size of the tank.
Wow.
That's a big.
A submarine.
It's a 10,000 gallon tank.
Wow.
Is that my backyard?
This is the dust collector at the high school. It was installed. We have a certificate of approval that it's ready to go. We've done a run on it. So now we can continue going back to using all the machinery
The wood
that
shop.
we would into that class.
Can I ask you a question about, I saw that the other day when I was at the high school. Is there anything put around that to keep, and some people
No,
from
but you know what,
tampering
that's a
with it?
great question. There's nothing code that tells us we need to put a fencing up, but it's funny, now that it's up there, typically at the high school students don't really mess with stuff. They're very disinterested in it. But we do know we have football games, we have younger people that might get
Right.
around.
And it does stick out. It says it's something you
So
notice.
we do have, this came in under budget, so I think we're going to be looking to maybe to put a chain link fence around this area.
Great.
Just to.
That's nice.
keep it
That's
so
good.
that
That's
it can't
good.
be easily accessed.
So Matt, that's fully operational now?
Correct.
Because last week at
That's awesome.
facility,
Oh, yay, so now
we
we're
were still waiting maybe the inspection or what it was.
Correct.
So everything's good.
No, we're
So,
Again.
is now the wood shop ready to go with the old curriculum?
Yes. Well, I don't know if it, I mean, I can't speak to that. I'm sorry. It's certainly, function-wise, yes. I can't, beyond that, I can't.
Ms. Hollander?
Well, our teacher who runs that is on leave. And so that is where we are with that. We are ready. We just are missing.
Oh, goodness gracious.
We just on a little.
No, I get it.
I don't know exactly.
Take some time off.
Okay.
So this is just doing some routine maintenance on our cooling tower. One of the projects that you saw slated for the future is we do know we still have some steel pipe in that has atrophied a little bit, and we can get a little chunks of the delaminating steel pipe in there. The cooling tower and all the piping outside was replaced here as part of the ESG project, so we just go up occasionally, make sure we don't have any chips that can clog those drains that would impede our ability to have a very efficient running cooling tower at the high school.
Our drone is in effect. Yeah.
Yeah, these are the trails at Baldwin Park. I don't know how familiar people are with that, but we have several trails up there. We mow them. This fall, we're going to be looking to do a little more pruning of the trees. There's nothing that impedes people's ability to walk up and down them, but we just know we want to cut them back. This is typically what it would look like. It's kind of hard to see this, but there's about 5 trails there, excuse me, in total. That total about 3/4 of a mile up there that we take care of.
Oh, close to the house.
This is some work we did outside. I mentioned the Larson farmhouse. That's part of under our purview here. We did some work over the septic tank there as part of that and wanted to establish a walk. This was the finished product. This was all done in-house. I'm really proud of the work that the grounds team did.
Wow.
Very nice.
So we installed this. This was some more work we had done on a rainy day. This is the basement of the Larson farmhouse. This was clean, wire brushed, waterproof.
Wow.
This is the end result. And so now we can use it to store documents and drawings that we have in a nice environment. This is putting down detectable warnings on our ramps in an attempt to just be a little more ADA compliant. This is at Scotticoke, what was requested in particular for some students. This is, per the fire marshal's request, we repainted all the fire lanes at all 5 schools this summer. We've also gone through and have worked on doing all the handicap spots. The painters that did these also did dozens of classrooms. 2 teachers that in the off-season work for us. We appreciate their efforts. A lot of exterior doors, a lot of painting on campuses and inside buildings. This, as you can see, we did the bullnose here at Sarah Noble. We know that we had someone with an impairment that they wanted these to really be profound and pronounced so they could see these, so all these were done.
Absolutely.
This is some tile work that we continually do here at Sarah Noble. End of the year money. I appreciate that we get it and we're able to go and replace these classrooms where we've had tiles that have come up and become loose. Since my time here, we've easily done over a dozen classrooms here.
Is it just really this building where we're having this issue?
Yes, it really seems that what we're seeing is when we take these up, we just didn't have a lot of mastic, which is the glue that essentially holds the tile, and we start at the worst rooms. We're at a place now where we feel a lot better about the safety. No one wants to step on a tile that's loose here. So we've come a long way in addressing that.
I'm sure the teachers feel better about their classrooms too.
Yes.
Here we are, this is before we get the mulch, we go and till this. We got this year about 150 cubic yards of mulch, 150 cubic yards last year for our 3 playgrounds. You till it up because this mulch, as you know, will just decompose over time, become dirt. So that mulch, we want it to be loose, it provides the cushioning. Typically, depending on the critical fall height of the actual equipment, you're looking at about 9 inches of depth of mulch we do. I just jumped really far ahead. Sorry about that. So that's the mulch. In front of the high school, we have an area here that it had been put landscape fabric down and mulched down years ago, as many homeowners could know. The weeds still grow up through it. So we opted to then just completely remove this, and we've sown it with grass. It's just much more easy to maintain for us, and it was certainly cheaper than looking at anything like a river rock or something to put down. This is just a typical pruning we do around there. We like to keep, for safety purposes, a line of sight between 2 to 7 feet around buildings so people can see out on our property. I had mentioned one of the trucks that we're looking to replace. It's a truck that we went and refurbished this bed, new plywood in it, sanded it down, repainted it, so we know we get a couple more years out of this bed. We're excited about that. This is the barn that I mentioned in Capitol. We got all new gutters installed on it to help take water away from that foundation around the barn. It is a stone foundation, so that was done this summer. This is just small repair, but it still counts. Someone had backed into the gates at the loading dock of Hill and Plain School, so we did the concrete repairs, new posts, and now it's prepped and ready to get painted. New dock leveler. So at the high school, when tractor trailers pull back there, the height of the tractor trailer is typically higher than the actual dock itself. So this dock leveler here is actually motorized, and we rise it up so that we're getting pallets. So we get a lot of pallets, a lot of big deliveries here. We can get it off now efficiently. All new skirting around here so that in the winter months when the truck's back up to it, you get a nice seal here so we're not getting too much heat loss. So we have mechanical paper towel dispensers in most of the restrooms, and you probably use them in places, you pull them down, and typically they work for you. If not, there's a handle on the side you would push to dispense it. In our kitchens, we don't want that. We want this to be completely hands-free. So they've all gone out to automated and at all of our kitchens for all the service sinks. There's numbering here. It might be hard to see here, so I'll zoom in here. We started Hill and Plain School to number all the exterior windows. We're working at Northville. Obviously, the game plan is to do all the windows at all the schools and have those. If you're a first responder showing up to a building and not familiar with it, and you're coming from the outside, if there was smoke coming out of a room and you want to easily identify it, it just helps them save time. This is a conference room that we redid here at Hill and Plain School. New carpeting, painted, assembled the new furniture, hung a TV in there, so they have a nice conference room space. Did the similar work here in the main office. So as I showed you a picture of the gutter and the snow rails, this is the door it's over. This door was replaced this year. It's a door that they use for for student pickup and drop off from parents. So we knew that some of the problem was with the door. It had rotted out and rusted at the bottom because the rain comes down. If it's coming from an angle, it's pelting it. So we put the canopy up to help to preserve the door and also give people some bit of a cover when you're opening the door to greet students and in the morning and in the afternoons. This is the new fencing that went up and the new basketball poles here at Hill and Plain on the basketball court there. These new poles, we have 2 of them at Northville and 2 of them at Hill and Plain. They're set at 8 feet. It just makes it a lot easier for some of our younger students to still get out there and be engaged in using these. The town then came through, a special thanks to the Department of Public Works, did crack sealing there in all the cracks. And then we went through there and put a coat on top of it. So hopefully we get a few more years out of that. So underneath all the windows here at Scatticoke, these were typically aluminum clad over plywood. We noticed that several of them, especially in the front of the building, had just atrophied over the years. So we've replaced this with a PVC, like an AZAC material. So we think we'll get many years out of that now. New triple bay sink in Scatticoke that we installed in the kitchen there. So you'll see these lights here. Those flashing lights were installed. They're integrated with our PA system. So this is the cafeteria at the high school. We've also done it at the wood shop, and we may expand it to some other buildings. So when the PA system goes on now, there's a visual cue. When you have 400 kids in there eating lunch, they can't hear the PA. So now they'll be able to see this light and listen to whatever's being projected across, spoken across the PA system. New security system was put into Sarah Noble. This now gives us, segregates the central office from the building, so we do have workers that want to come in after hours on weekends. They can get in and access central office without disrupting the Berg system within the actual building itself. New carpeting we did in 2 rooms to create conference rooms here. As you can see, we still have the chalkboard up, still have the bulletin boards up, easily can reverse back into a classroom in the future if necessary, but it gives us more of a professional office space to work in as far as meetings are concerned. And this is just, this is the bread and butter stuff that goes on all summer long. We wash windows, we strip floors, we scrub carpets, and we've done this at all the schools here.
By the way, the floors look great out there.
They do.
I know I say that every year, but they
I know.
always look good.
So that's some of the work we've done over the summer, some of the large projects that were going on here with contractors, some stuff we do internally, so very busy.
Great. Wow.
Excellent job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For your whole crew. That's a lot of work.
We're not done yet.
Summer projects that did that. Thank you for all that. Are we on to food services?
I think so.
Unit eligibility?
So as I mentioned during my report, we applied for the community eligibility provision because for 2 reasons. One, we have over 25% free and reduced lunch students, and we also had a healthy balance, which made us qualify to have free breakfast and lunch for all students for 24-25.
It's amazing.
Amazing.
That was fantastic.
So, again, thank you to Mrs. Sullivan for shepherding us through that process.
Right.
That's very, very helpful to families. I know that I've seen a lot. People are very, very grateful.
Yes. So that's fantastic. And I saw that you sent out a message and families have been.
Indeed. Yes.
Great. Good. It's a good thing. Okay. The McCarthy Observatory annual report. It's enclosed here. They've submitted recap of what they've done. As you know, we've had a telescope upgrade there. The town and the board both partnered on that 50-50. And I get you over there anytime you guys want. You just let us know, okay?
You should all.
I have been asked, so, I can easily set up a time, and the volunteers, the team, they want you over there,
Well, maybe we can move one of our meetings over there and tack it onto a
You
meeting.
can't fit in the room.
It's pretty small.
Small.
Trust me.
Surprisingly small.
No, I mean, not have a meeting in the observatory, but over at the high school, so that then we can just walk over.
Well,
and
if
see
I
it.
set it up, I put the invite out there before, so I will try and, I'll check everybody's calendar, but please do.
We could check out the gym floor, too.
Yeah, there you go.
Jeez. Okay, that's it. I'll need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Tom, Leslie, all those in favor? It's 9:06.
That's not bad for everything we did.